Um,
Okay.
okay, so just to quickly review, and today is going to be more like a visual daf, but it'll go quick. The Mishnah said that when the witnesses would come before the Bezdin will question them. Did you see it lifnei hachama? Did you see the new moon? Sheldon just walking in. Hi, Sheldon. Hi, Sheldon. We just started.
Good evening,
Yes,
everyone.
we just started.
Right.
So the Mishnah said before that when the Edom would come to Bezdin, they would question them. Where do you see the new moon? Here's the sun. I'm going to make an arrow. And the new moon, is it in front of, lifnei means in front of the sun? Okay, because as you know, during the new moon, when you can't see the moon, the sun and moon rise simultaneously at the same time. And then as the day goes on, the next day, it rises 50 minutes after sunrise. So it's always a little bit behind. So that means on the first day of the month, when the sun is setting, the moon is about to set, but you can see the brand new moon. So the question they asked him, did you see it in front of the sun, to the right of the sun, which seems to be on the north side of the sun? Okay, the north part, or here's the sun setting, and did you see it on the south side? On the south side of the so achrei chama, behind the sun. That's what the Gemara understood. That's what the Gemara understood the Mishnah. So let's read it. So the Gemara says like this: Hainu lifnei hachama. The question they asked him, did you see it before the sun? Hainu litzvoina. That's the same question as asking, did you see it in the north? Hainu la'achar hachama. Did you see it behind the sun? Right? Hainu l'droima. That's the same thing as saying south. So why did you break this up into two questions? It's basically the same question. Lifnei hachama. Lifnei hachama is litzvoina. Right? I'm sewing in the Mishnah. And la'achar hachama is l'droima, to the south. So what's going on over here? Are they different questions? Amar Abaya says, Pigimasa lifnei chama la'achar chama. That means the question that they really asked him was this question over here. Which way was the point? Pigimasa is the point. Was it facing this way, lifnei hachama, right? Lifnei hachama, or la'achar chama, or I'm sorry, towards the sun. Okay, we'll say it away from the sun or towards the sun. If it says that they were facing towards the sun, imagine the points facing towards the sun, that's impossible. The points never face the sun. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan made a comment. Why does the pasuk say, Hamshel v'fachad imoy oisa shalom b'mroimav? That God, Hamshel v'fachad imoy oisa shalom b'mroimav, God makes peace. What does that mean? Ma'olam ro'asa chama pigimasa shalavana. The sun never saw the pegima of the lamana. I'm just going to show you again. The pegima is the dots, and always the points are facing away from the sun, right? It's impossible to have it that it's facing towards the sun, like they have it over here in this picture, right over here. This is an impossible picture where the points are facing towards the sun. And why can't that be? Because it says that the sun would be staring at the darkened side of the moon, and God never made it that way. And the sun never looks at the other side of a rainbow. It's always the bow facing the sun, not the other way around. So the Gemara says, the dark side of the moon will not face the sun, the chol shadata, because the moon would feel bad that that the sun is staring at its darkened side, so to speak. What that means, I don't know. Pigimasa shel keshes, this I understand. The as you know, a rainbow is just a bow in the opposite direction, but it doesn't face it like a U. Why? So people who serve the sun should not think that giri komashadya, that the sun is holding like a bow and arrow, and it's going to pull back and shoot at Earth. So therefore, it doesn't look it that way. God made it the other way around, so it doesn't look like the sun is holding on to a bow to shoot those that deny it. So that's the meaning of the Mishnah. So again, lifnei achama means where the points were pointing. Now the Mishnah is asked another question. Kama hoya gvoya al ayin hoya noita. Tanachada, we learned in Moran Brisa, litzvayna dvarav kayamim, l'draima loyama klom, which means if they said that the moon was in the north to the sun, then it works. Then it's acceptable. L'draima, but if they say the moon was in the south of the sun, loyama klom, it doesn't make sense. So the Gemara says, "Vatanya ipcha." What we found, another Brisa says just the opposite. L'draima dvarav kayamim. If you find the moon to the south, then it makes sense. L'tzvayna, but if they say the moon is in the north to the sun, loyama klum, it doesn't make sense. So how do you reconcile these two Brises? So you probably thought about it in your head. Of course, it has to do with the seasons. You see, in the season of the summer, okay, the sun. Let's take the sun. The sun is more north, obviously. So that's why we feel it warmer in the northern part of the hemisphere. So therefore, the moon, the sun will set more to the north, very to the north, and the moon will be off to the south during the summertime. So, and in the wintertime, it's the opposite. In the wintertime, the sun is very to the south, more southwest, obviously, but it's more south because it's on the sun is more closer to the southern hemisphere. So that's why it's cold in the north. And therefore, the moon will be to the north of where the sun is. And that's why in the summertime, it's going to be in the south. In the wintertime, it's going to be in the north. Okay, let's see if there's a picture. You see, it could be either this way to the south. That means it's this. If you look at this picture, you can tell me this is summertime in Israel. And if you see this picture where here's the sun going down and off to the north. You see, I have the thing over here. Off to the north will be wintertime. So that's why it's colder. And then the moon will be this way. Okay. Now the Mishnah is we talked about how high in the horizon did you see? So let's see what the Gemara says. Tana Rabban, the rabbis taught. One said it was 2 sticks, 2 animal prods high off the horizon. And one said, I thought it was 3. Edus and kayamis. You can accept those that Adim because they're off by 1, that means they could still be aligned with each other. But one says 3. If one said 3 and one said 5 sticks high, then it's no good. Why? Because they're so far apart, they can't be considered as a pair of Adim. But they can combine. Let's say you find another person that agrees with one person that agrees with the one that said 5, he can join together and become a new Adis. But he can't be an Adis with the one that said Gimel. So let's see. That's 1 stick high. Here's 2 sticks high, and this would be 3 sticks high. If one said 5 sticks high and one said 3, they can't combine with each other, but they can combine with a third party. The next Gemara is going to talk about this picture over here, which is if you see the moon not looking at the sky, but you see it a reflection in the water, or you look out the window and you see the moon, okay, or you see it in the clouds. Is that good enough? Okay, let's see what the Gemara says. Tana Rabban, the rabbis taught. Re'inuhu b'mayim. We saw the new moon. It was in the water. We didn't look up. We just looked at a reflection in the water. Re'inuhu ba'ashashis. We saw it through the glass window pane. Re'unihu ba'avim. And we saw it through the clouds. Ein me'idim olav. That's not a good testimony, because you have to see it directly with your eyes. Now, don't think that glasses is no good enough. Because if you see it, if the Gemara just said that if you see it through a window pane, it's no good. But the truth is that what the Gemara means is that you see a reflection of the moon. You don't see the moon. When you look at the moon with your glasses, you're seeing the moon. So that would be good. So anyway, you saw it all this and you saw it confused, then they're not good. Chetzia b'mayim, if you saw half the moon in the water, or chetzi b'avin, you only saw half the moon in the clouds, or chetzi b'ashash, you only saw half the new moon through the window pane, ein me'idin olav. Then you're not acceptable testimony. So the Gemara says that's obvious. Hashda, now that you said Kulei Amret Loi, if they saw the whole moon through the water, you say they're not good. Edim, do you need to tell me if they only saw half the moon, they're okay? They're not okay? Of course they're not okay. If even if they saw the whole moon that way, it's no good. Certainly if they saw half the moon, it's no good. This is what the Gemara means to say. You actually saw half the reflection in the water, but then you looked up and saw the other half in the sky. You saw half the reflection through a cloud, and then the other half through the sky. So one half you saw through a cloud, so one half you saw through the sky. You saw half through the glass pane, and the chetzi berakia, and the other half you actually had the window open. You could see the other half. Ein me'idin olav, you can't see it. Let's see if it has a picture. So here, like I'm saying over here, chetzi berakia, you actually saw half in the sky, and the other half you saw through the clouds, or the other half you saw through the water somehow. And like this is the no good. You have to see a complete moon completely to be considered kosher testimony. Here's the case where you saw half through the window glass and half through the sky, the open window. Also no good. Okay? Now, the Gemara continues. Torah Banim, the rabbi said, if they said, we saw it and then we didn't see it anymore, then they're not good testimony. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? If they saw it once, why do they need to see it the whole time? They have to see it the whole time. I mean, once you saw it once, you're done. Why are they not kosher Adim? Amar Abai explained, this is what they meant to say. We saw it without thinking about it, and then we took another look, then we didn't see it. So the first time they were looking, but they weren't focused on looking at the moon. They thought they saw it. So they're not kosher Adim. So the Gemara says, my timer, because it's possible they didn't really see the moon the first time, since they weren't paying attention. What they did see was a cloud in the shape of the moon. The cloud in the shape of the moon. You see, this is a cloud. It really is not the moon, but it looks like the moon. So if you weren't focused and concentrating on seeing the moon, just because you may have seen this, and therefore you're not be considered a kosher pair of Adim. So the Gemara, the Mishnah, we begin the new Mishnah. Okay, the Mishnah says that the Mishnah discusses how were the Mekadesh the Chodesh. In other words, once they establish that we accept these pair of Adim, so now, as you know, in the Beis HaMikdash, we had the court system of 70 judges with one on top of them, the smartest person in the room. Okay, he was the head of all the 70. He was number 71. Now, you don't need all 71 to make Bezdin Kodesh. You don't need to make Kiddush. You don't need to make Rosh Chodesh. You don't need all 71. You need the head guy, that we'll call him the Nasi, the president, plus two others from that group of 71. Together, they can sanctify the new month. Of course, as you know, there are other types of bezdins, like the bezdin of 23 and the bezdin of 3. But what we're talking about is the main Supreme Court in the Beis HaMikdash. You take two and the head guy, and that's how you make Kiddush HaChodesh. So Rosh Bezdin Oimem Mekudesh. The head of the Bezdin says it's a holy. And here there's a very important point. Everybody has to respond. If you're in the crowd, you say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. So it's holy, holy. So there's a response. Whether you're sanctifying the 30th day as Rosh Chodesh, which is the normal time, because basically every month is about 29 and a half days. So the 30th day usually is the first day of the next month. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter if you make the 30th day Rosh Chodesh, you do it this procedure. Whether you're making the 31st day, because you didn't see it on the 30th day, you're not making the 30th day Rosh Chodesh, you're making the 31st day. In both scenarios, you have to be Mekadesh the Chodesh. You have to make it holy. Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Tzadok has an opinion. If you didn't see it on the 30th day, if you're not sanctifying the 30th day as Rosh Chodesh, then you don't need to sanctify it on the 31st day, because in heaven, the Bezdin in heaven said that the 31st day is already Rosh Chodesh. You see, on the 30th day, they wait till what we decide down here. But since we didn't decide that the 30th day is Rosh Chodesh, so it's automatically, you can't have a month of 31 days. So the maximum amount a month can be is 30 days. So automatically, 31st day is Rosh Chodesh. So already in heaven, they declared it Rosh Chodesh. So we don't need to do it down here. Now, the Rosh Bezdin has to pronounce Mekudesh. How do you know? How do you know that the head of the Bezdin has to pronounce it? That Moshe announced the Yom Tovim of God. Now, the Rosh Chodesh is also called a Yom Tov. From this pasuk, you see that the head of the Bezdin, which is the Nasi, the smartest of all the Bezdins, all the judges, he's the one that says Mekudesh, holy. Everybody in the crowd has to answer Mekudesh, Mekudesh. Minalan, how do I know that? Amar Papa, Amar Kra, Asher Tikru Oisam. That all of you, they, which is plural, you should pronounce them. Kri be atem. We read it as you. God is commanding the people in the audience should be responding Mekudesh, Mekudesh. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman says, how do you know the audience responds? From another pasuk. Eila heim moyadai. So we put a pause between Eila and heim moyadai. Heim yomru moyadai. The people in the crowd should say, it's an appointed day. It's Rosh Chodesh. Now the question is, why do they have to respond twice? Why isn't it enough that they should say Mekudesh, like the Rosh Bezdin says Mekudesh? Mekudesh, Mekudesh, Trezimna Lamali. Why did they say it twice? Because the pasuk says Mikroe Kodesh, pronouncements, because the yud makes it plural of holy. So when they respond, they have to make two pronouncements of holy. So that's why they said Mekudesh, Mekudesh. The Rabbi Lazar Rab Tzadok Oimem Lainir was my name in Kachnois. Tanya, we learned at a brisa. Palam Oimer. He says Bismano Yemikach, just the opposite. If you're making Rosh Chodesh on the 30th day, there's no need to say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. Shaloi Bismani. But if you're making it not in its normal time, you're making the Rosh Chodesh on the 31st day, then Mekachnois, then you make it sanctified. He has a reason for that. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, and this we saw before in this Masechta, this unique opinion of Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, that there's no inyan of making, there's no concept of making Mekudesh, Mekudesh. Ben kach ein mekachnois. You don't need Bezdin to say Mekudesh, holy. Shunama, because it says by Yovel, v'kidashtem es shnas chamishim shana. You have to make the 50th year holy. Shonim atem mekadesh, which means only this year of Jubilee you make holy. You have to say Mekudesh. V'at mekadesh chadashim. You don't only have to make every Rosh Chodesh Kodesh. So we have basically four different opinions on when you say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. But our opinion in our Mishnah is that this Tanakama holds no matter what, the 30th day, the 31st day, no matter when Rosh Chodesh is, you have to say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Lazar bar Tzadok. The halacha is like Rabbi Lazar bar Tzadok in our Mishnah that says that you only make Kiddush Chodesh only on if you're making Rosh Chodesh on the 30th day, not on the 31st day. Amar Abaya, we have a Mishnah, a Stam Mishnah that seems to agree with the opinion of Rabbi Lazar bar Tzadok. Why? Because the Mishnah says, Ru'uhu Bezdin b'chol Yisrael. If the entire Jewish people and the court, all the 71 people and the entire Jewish people, was a beautiful, clear night in Israel, and then Nechru Eidim, and then we have Eidim there, but on the 30th day, we forgot to say Mekudesh, and it got dark. It's already the 31st day. It automatically becomes the 31st day is Rosh Chodesh. So we see that they didn't even have to sanctify the 31st. It's an automatic. Ma'uber, and it automatically becomes the 31st day becomes Rosh Chodesh. Mekudesh Leib, but you don't need to say today, 31st day is Rosh Chodesh. So we see from this anonymous Mishnah that the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar bar Tzadok, that you only need to be Mekadesh if you're making the 30th day as Rosh Chodesh, not the 31st day. So the Gemara says, responds, look, no, the Gemara says, not true. Really, you have to say that the 30th and the 31st day, no matter what, you always have to say, the Bezdin has to say it's Mekudesh. But the Mishnah did not say Harei Zeh Mekudesh. The Mishnah just said that that you have to make the 31st day as Rosh Chodesh. Because I would have thought, Salka Daite Chamina, Hoyel Ver'u Bezdin Chayisrael, since it was so publicized that it was such a clear night, everybody saw the new moon. A parsama, it's already publicized that the 30th day is Rosh Chodesh. V'loyli abrua, and we should not make the 31st day as Rosh Chodesh. Kamash Malan, that's why the Mishnah says, no, you have to make the 31st day Rosh Chodesh. You can't say just because everybody saw the new moon, it's automatic. No, the 31st day is Rosh Chodesh, albeit you still have to say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. So it could be that the halacha is like the Chachamim, that on both days, no matter when you make Rosh Chodesh, on the 30th or the 31st, you have to say Mekudesh, Mekudesh. And that Mishnah, that anonymous Mishnah, could even go according to the Rabbanan. Now, new Mishnah. When Eidim would come, they would come to Rabbi Gamliel, who was, let's say, the head of the Bezdin. He was the smartest man from David HaMelech. He was a Einikel of David HaMelech. And he was the leader of the court, which was now located after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash in Yavne, right? So people would come to him, and the Eidim would come to him, and they would go to his private office. And he had on his wall, Demus Tzuras Levana. He had pictures of the moon, Hoyelay Rab Gamliel Betavla. He had it in a board in front of him, Uba Koisel, or on the wall behind him, Bal Yosei, in his attic. In his attic means that's where he had his office there. And that's where privately he would meet with the Eidim to question them. Shebehen Maras Hadyotis, he would show the pictures to the simple folk, and he asked the Eidim, HaKazeri Isa, Oikazer, did you see the moon looking this way or like that way? So the Gemara is now going to go off on a tangent, which is an interesting tangent. The Gemara asks this question, how could you have a picture of the moon? Are you allowed to make a picture of the moon? Even, a flat piece of paper with a picture of the moon. Umi Shari, is that permitted? Voksiv, the pasuk says, God says, Loi sasin iti. You're not allowed to recreate or make something like me, which means, how could you make God? God's invisible. So we darshan, Loi sasin kedemus shamoshai. You're not allowed to make a picture of God's servants in the sky, which means you're not allowed to make a picture of the sun, the moon, stars, anything. Those are included in this law of Loi sasin iti. So how did Rabbi Gamliel have these pictures of the moon? Rabbi explained. The Torah didn't only prohibited only things that you could draw to scale. What do you mean? Kidetanya. A person, no matter how wealthy you are, right? No matter how wealthy you are, you can't make your house looking like the Beis HaMikdash, like over here. You build a house in Back Lawrence looking like the same dimensions of the Beis HaMikdash, or you make a porch looking like the Ulam, or you make the menorah. That's what he's saying. That's what it means. Loisas and iti means don't make something that is used to serve me. Don't recreate that in your own private domain. Loyas odem bayis, you're not allowed to build a house tavnis a hechel that has the shape of the hechel. Aksadra, or a porch tavnis ulam, like the four chamber. Chotze, you're not allowed to make a courtyard keneged azara, like the azara. You're not allowed to have shulchan with the same dimensions as the shulchan keneged a shulchan on the Beis HaMikdash. Menorah, you're not allowed to have a lamp in your house that looks exactly like keneged menorah, like the lamp that was in the Beis HaMikdash, which was 7 branches. Aval oisa, we go to the Amud Beis. Shal chamisha, you're allowed to make a menorah of 5, v'shal shisha, or 6, v'shal shmoina, or 8. So you're not allowed to make it look like this, but you can have it with different numbers. V'shal shiva leyasa, but 7 you're not allowed to make it. Afilo shel shar mine matchis, even if it was made out of other metals. You see, in the Chumash it says that to make a menorah made out of gold, but we have a drasha that the b'diavad you can make the menorah even out of any metal. So that's why the Tanna Kama says you can't make a menorah made out of any other metal. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, af shel eitz lo yaaseh kidei she'arasu malchei beis Chashmonai. You're not allowed to make it out of wood the same way that the kingdom of Chashmonai, when they overtook the Greeks, they didn't have a menorah, so they made a makeshift menorah of wood, And Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda holds it is permitted to make a makeshift menorah out of wood. He has another way to darshan the psukim, that the psukim did not limit you only gold and only metal. It included you're allowed to make out of wood. You just can't make it out of pottery, but wood is okay. So therefore, since potentially you could make it out of wood in your own home, you're not allowed to make even a menorah that's 7 branches made out of wood. So what was Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda's proof that you can make a menorah out of wood? Because the Chashmonoim made a menorah out of wood. So Amar Loi, so the rabbis responded to Rabbi Yosef Bar Yehuda, Misham Ra'aya. From there is a proof. Shpudim shel bazim hoya v'chipim b'ba'atz. It was a mellow, like it looked like wood. It looked like wood, but it really was made out of metal. They covered it with this with this like type of metal that's dull a little bit. So it had the appearance that it looked like wood, but really it was a metal. And therefore, that's not a proof that they actually made a menorah of wood. Hashiru, but when they got wealthier after, the Beis Chashmonoim took over and time passed, and they became the new leaders after the Greeks, right? So Asum Shel Kesef, they made the menorah out of silver. Chazru Hashiru, and then got really wealthy. Asum Shel Zav, then they made it back into gold. So what the Gemara just concluded is Rabbi Gamliel has no problem. The pasuk loisas and iti, that's talking about something else. That's talking about you're not allowed to make your home with the dimensions of the Beis Hamikdash. That's what it's talking about. So v'shamosim she'afsha. So the Gemara says. So what do you mean? So you just concluded v'shamosim she'afsha lasos kamoisim mishari. But if you have items in the sky that serve God that you cannot draw to scale, is that permitted? You're trying to say it's permitted to create, to draw? For Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, loy asas and iti. You're not allowed to do that. Loy sasin kedmush shamoshayim shamshim lefonei bamorim. You're not allowed to make any picture that serves in the sky. Here, the key word bamorim is the sky, up in the upper, sky. So therefore, it seems from this Brisa, you're not allowed to even make a picture of the moon. Abai explained, the Torah did not ask you only to make a formation of one piece that has 4 faces on it. I don't know how this looked, but in Yecheskel, it describes the chair that God had, and there are 4 faces on it. One of a human being, which had the face of Yaakov, one of an ox, one of an eagle, and one of a lion. It's in Yecheskel. That type of chair and that type of one piece, you're not allowed to make. But anything, a picture of a moon, that should be okay. So the Gemara says, so you're trying to tell me it only answered the 4 parts. If you make a chair looking like with 4 figures on it, but the parts of Adam L'chudei Tishrei. But if you make the picture of one human being, you make a statue of one human being, that is permitted. Allah Matanyo, why do we say kol partus mutaran? All partsufos, all busts, let's say, are permitted. Chutz mi partsuf adam. You make a shape, a bust of a head of a human being, that's usher. But you just told me only if it has 4 parts to it, like the other 4. If it's connected with a lion, eagle, and an ox, then it's usher. And this price says by definition itself, it's usher. I went to the yeshiva of Abaya, the lecture of Abaya, and I understood it. Loisasen isi means loisasen oisi, that humans are separate. A human you're not allowed to make by itself, because God says, "Don't make me." Now, you think that God's invisible, right? Of course. But if you learn Tanakh, God somehow appears like a human being in certain places of Tanakh. And so that implies that God's saying, don't make the way I appear in a prophecy, which is in the likeness of a human being. So therefore, a human being, you're not allowed to make by itself. And this is a big problem. When you buy a chess set that has figures of humans on them, you really... you shouldn't have that, it seems, or you're not allowed to create that. Maybe you shouldn't, we'll see if you're allowed to own it if somebody else made it. But to create a statue of a human being, that's not permitted. So the Gemara says, okay, but only a human being you're not allowed to make. But a moon, permitted. To draw out a moon on a piece of paper, that's permitted. Gemara still knocks at it. Shar Shemashim Mishari, is it permitted to make other figures? Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, loy sasin iti, loy sasin kedush masha hasham shalafon b'morim, kegoyin afanim srom mechayes kodesh umlach shorish. You're not allowed to make a picture of an angel, or the holy chayas, or the holy afanim, different types of the flaming angels. So therefore, you're not allowed to make pictures of angels. So maybe you're not allowed to make a picture of the moon. In the upper sky, those servants that serve God in the upper sky, that's not permitted. To make a picture of an angel, that's not permitted. But perhaps what the Gemara is now saying, that the lower sky, which is our heavens that we see from planet Earth, that's permitted. So the Gemara asks back, is it permitted to make a picture of something that exists in the sky, that's on the lower part of the sky? For Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, it's in the Nasaris Adibris, Loisasa, you're not allowed to make them a figure, anything that appears in the heaven. The rabbis, that includes Chama, Ulavana, Kachavim, Mazolis. You're not allowed to make any of these pictures, a sun, moon, and stars. Umimal, Larabas Malach Hasharis, you're not allowed to make a picture of an angel. So it's clearly that you're not allowed to even make the picture. So the Gemara says, yes, when does it become usher to make them? When you're going to use them as a avodah zarah. Ki tanya hila of dam, when you're going to use that as an avodah zarah. So that's not permitted. So, but here Rabbi Gamliel was not using it as an avodah zarah, he's using it as a teaching source. So the Gemara answers ila of them, if to make it as an avodah zarah, anything that you make that you're going to use as an avodah zarah is not permitted. Afila shilsha katanami, you're not allowed to make a little worm that you plan on using it as an avodah zarah. So what's the chiddush that you're not allowed to make the sun and the moon? So the Gemara says, Ein hachinami. That's exactly what the pasuk is saying. The pasuk says, you're not allowed to make anything that's asher b'shmayim ma'al v'asher ba'aretz, anything on planet Earth. The Tanya asher ba'aretz, l'rabas, you're not allowed to make. It includes harem, mountains, gavaris, hills, yamim, rivers, seas, naharis, rivers, afikim, wells, ogoyas, and springs. Mitachas, anything underneath planet Earth, rabel shilshakatan. You're not allowed to even make a copy of a small worm. And the idea is because you're going to serve it. So again, where we're holding now is no problem, Rabbi Gamliel, because he obviously wasn't going to made it. He made the picture, but he wasn't using it as a avodah zarah. The isser to make these figures is only if you're going to use it as an avodah zarah. So the Gemara asks the final two questions. Is it permitted just to make them without serving them? That's permitted. But Tanya, we learned in a Brisa, loy sas and isti, loy sas and knemush hamoshai hamshamshim lefonai kagoin chamo ulavona koichavu mamazolis. So you're not allowed to make it at all. This pasuk, this Brisa seems to be just right there. They draw the line. You're not allowed to make any picture of the sun, the moon, stars, or any of the galaxies and the like. So it's clear from this brisa, even if you're not going to use it as an avodah zarah, you're not allowed to do it. So the Gemara answers the question, Shani Rabbi Gamliel is different. Other people, he bought it in the store. Other people made it. So the Gemara says, wait a second. Rav Yehuda had a ring, a signet ring. And on the signet ring, it had a protrusion of a figure, right? And other people made this ring for him. So let's take a picture of the ring. He had a ring. This is Rav Yehuda's ring, and it stuck out. So it's not an avodah zarah. I mean, it was used to sign documents, right? And nevertheless, Rav Yehuda had this ring. And Rav Shmuel told him, Rav Yehuda, and Shmuel, his rabbi, told his Talmud, Rav Yehuda, Shinana, my sharp one, Same Eine Dinan, damage it a little bit, take out its eye. In other words, don't have it, as a complete, you should damage it a little bit. So we see that even though Rav Yehuda had this ring that wasn't used for avodah zarah, Rav Shmuel told him not to. He should damage it. So the Gemara says, Hasam Chaysame Boilet Have Umishim Chashada. There, it had a signet ring that was protruding, and people will think that Rav Yehuda has an avodah zarah on his finger. That's what people will think, and therefore, we learned to the brisa. Tabas, if you have a ring, chasome bolid, if it's protruding, also anichi, you're not allowed to put it on, but you're allowed to sign it with it. Why are you allowed to sign with it if you're not allowed to put it on? Because when you sign in it, the image is sunken in. So it's not protruding. So that's permitted. If the image is sunken in, that's fine. But the opposite will hold true. If you have a ring, where the signet ring is sunken in, the ring is sunken in, you're allowed to put it on because it's not protruding. So that's not usher. But you're not allowed to sign it because it'll make the opposite happen, the opposite effect. This is permitted to put on, but because you're not allowed to sign with it because you're making these images. But what you do see is that you're concerned once you have an image, people will think that you have an Avodah Zarah image. So the Gemara asks a question, and we'll get back to Rabbi Gamliel. Are you concerned that if you have an image around, are you concerned that people will think you're worshiping Avodah Zarah if you have this image on your ring? There was a shul that was, that they rebuilt in Nehardai. And Rashi explains it was called this building that because they brought stones from Jerusalem and they built this shul, like I guess they have in Young Israel, they have stones from Jerusalem. So they brought stones and they built this shul. Fine, it's a nice shul, but the Have Be Andarte, it had a statue of the king in the shul. Like we have a Israeli flag, they had a statue of the king in the shul. Rav Shmuel and the father of Shmuel and Levi all davened there, they didn't say anything. They said it's fine, you could daven there. So we're not concerned that people think you're doing Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says Rabim Shani, that's a shul of a public. It's a public venue. It's a public venue, and then you're not worried about people think that it's an Avodah Zarah. People know it's the king, and we're not worshiping it. So now the Gemara gets back to Rabbi Gamliel and gives you 3 terutzim, and that ends the daf. For Rabbi Gamliel, Yacharu, Rabbi Gamliel is a private man, and how the Gemara gets back to it. How is he allowed to draw pictures of the moon or have pictures of the moon? People will think that it's Avodah Zarah because Rabbi Gamliel it's not a public place. He's an individual, and he has these private pictures and photos that people will think of the moon, and you're not allowed to have these pictures because people used to worship the celestial beings. So how is he allowed to keep them? So Gemara says, Kivan the Nosihi Shchiche Rabban Gabe. Since he's the president of the Supreme Court, it's like a shul. Everybody comes to him, so everybody knows that it has nothing to do with Avodah Zarah. So nobody's going to accuse him of having an Avodah Zarah in his house. The Gemara wants to give you a new teretz. The prakim hava. It was made of parts. In other words, it was broken. You can take it apart. So normally they took it apart, and it was half moons all the time. And when he wanted to show it, he just put it together and connected it like a puzzle, just to question the Eidim, and then he would take it apart again, like you can see in the picture over here. That's the second teretz. In the final teretz is he had pictures of the moon, but lislamed aved. But it was used to teach. It was meant to teach and for understanding. And there we have an extra leniency because you're not allowed to learn to perform the same acts as the goyim. You're allowed to learn and study what the goyim do, lahavin ulahiris, to understand and to teach. And since this was a teaching mechanism to question if the Eidim are true, that's why Rabbi Gamliel had this leniency of having these pictures in his home about the moon. Okay.
A lot of stuff
today, but we discussed interesting Kodesh and everything is clear.
Good.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.